Welcome to Move Your Mind. My name's Nick Bracks, and this is a podcast where we have real conversations with real people and give real advice. In a world driven by data, technology, and innovation, it's easy to forget that one of the most important skills to possess, both personally and professionally, is your ability to understand and manage your emotions. There's no shortcut to working on emotional intelligence, but it can lead to unlocking your full potential, fostering healthier relationships, and achieving enormous success. At its core, emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, understand, manage, and influence your emotions and the emotions of those around you. It's not about suppressing feelings, but harnessing their power for positive outcomes. When you possess emotional intelligence, you become the architect of your life. Consider the workplace, where emotional intelligence can be the difference between a mediocre career and an exceptional one. It's a leader who inspires trust and loyalty because they genuinely care about their team's well-being. It's the employee who excels not just because of their technical skills, but because they understand the unspoken dynamics of collaboration. In your personal life, emotional intelligence is the glue that binds families and friendships. It's the parent who listens to their child's fears instead of dismissing them. It's the friend who senses when you need a shoulder to cry on without you saying a word. Emotional intelligence is not an innate gift reserved for the lucky few. It's a skill. And like any skill, it can be learned and honed with practice and dedication. It starts with self-awareness, knowing what you feel, why you feel it, and how it affects your thoughts and actions. From self-awareness, we move to self-regulation. It's about managing your emotions, not suppressing them. It's about finding constructive outlets for anger, stress, and anxiety, so they don't control you. Then there's empathy, the ability to step into someone else's shoes and understand their feelings and perspectives. Empathy builds bridges and fosters compassion, and it's the cornerstone of meaningful relationships. Finally, we have social skills. This is the art of effective communication, conflict resolution, and collaboration. It's about building rapport, inspiring trust, and creating an environment where everyone can thrive. My next guest has dedicated his life to this subject. Robin Hills has over 35 years business and commercial experience helping executives and leaders develop business performance through increased self-awareness and understanding others. His focus is in supporting personality and behaviour in business based on the everyday application of emotional intelligence. This is the second time Robin's come on the Move Your Mind podcast. Robin, so good to see you again. We were talking just before and it was probably a year and a half or 2 years ago, which is kind of crazy how quick time goes. But yeah, great to see that you're still doing all of the amazing work that, we were talking about last time.
It's great to have a catch-up, Nick. Thank you. Yes, I think we were in the middle of the pandemic or just coming out of it when we last spoke, and things have certainly progressed and the world's changed since then, and some things for the better and some things for the worse, but here we are.
Exactly. I think that's pretty accurate. It's changed a lot since then for the better and worse, but we're here, and it is, it feels to me like it was only 6 months ago that we last spoke, or it's crazy how quick time goes. But I think that's just the modern world. It moves at such a fast pace, and we need people like you, talking about and offering the tools that you're offering, because how do we switch off otherwise? And it's something that I'm trying to work more and more on. I think a lot of people are, but we struggle to, because it is just so chaotic. So yeah, I think it's great what you're doing. And I guess, I want to find out what you have been up to recently.
Oh, I've been up to a lot, going for global domination like you are, but striving to get the messages out there, really to try and help people to help themselves to lead a more fulfilling life and to feel much more in control. And as you say, last time we spoke, it was a while ago, so long ago that both of us have forgotten, but it does seem like 6 months ago, and I think that's because we had a really good conversation.
I think that's another part, exact 100%. And it's a crazy thing where I think what it reinforces is how important it is to really connect with people, because I always say, the best thing about doing this podcast is I get to sit here for, a focused amount of time, and we have these conversations. And most of the time, we had never met before that. Most of the time I've never met these people. But because you're actually both making the time to really connect and understand each other, learn about, the work you're doing, learn about your philosophy, whatever else, you build that connection. And we don't build that in so many aspects of life. A lot of the time, we don't build that with our own friends, let alone with a stranger that we're talking to.
No, and interestingly, the work that I do is in the business environment, and the sort of things that we talk about on your podcast are not the sort of things that are necessarily shared within the business environment. Certainly, when I go into businesses and talk to them about emotional intelligence, which is my specialty area, I don't necessarily use those two words when I'm talking to them about what it is that I want to talk to them about. I'm using words like leadership development, performance management, aligning values with the business, communication, teamwork, and emotional intelligence really underpins all of that. But emotional intelligence is beyond that as well. It's how do you, as an individual, look after yourself in such a way that you can build up authentic relationships and make the appropriate decisions that you need to make.
Yeah, so that's super interesting, and is a big part of that because they also respond better to you using language that's more familiar with the business environment.
I think that's partly it. I think also there's still this fear of emotional intelligence digging into areas that they don't want to dig into. A lot
Yeah,
of organizations don't necessarily want to recognize emotions as being something that they should tune into. And that's probably because they've got a very simplistic view of emotions. It's basically the 6 basic emotions, which include fear, happiness, sadness, and anger. And some of those they don't want in the work environment, and some of them they do. But whether they like it or not, they're going to get all of those emotions plus many, many more. And the more I
yeah,
learn about emotions, the more fascinating it becomes. Because as I sit here talking to you, what emotion am I experiencing? I don't know. It's a pleasant emotion, but I can't necessarily put a label on it. When we spoke last time, we spoke a lot about contentment and happiness. Am I feeling contented and happy? Yeah, a little bit, but it's beyond that. There's something else. There's that engagement you were talking about. Is engagement an emotion? And it's interesting because if you look at some of the academic studies, there could be anything between 3,000 and 27,000 emotions, depending upon what journal you're reading. Now, some of those emotions we just can't put labels on, and some of them we just don't have words for. And some of them, I don't know. Perhaps the words exist, but I don't even know them. So what we've got to do is to look at how we're feeling, and just simply put it: is it a pleasant emotion, or is it an unpleasant emotion? And then we need to further subdivide them. Is it a pleasant emotion that I'm using constructively? Is it an unpleasant emotion that I'm using constructively? Or is it a pleasant emotion that I'm using destructively, or a pleasant emotion that I'm using constructively? Have I got that right? So
I
it's
think you did. I think you did.
pleasant
Yeah,
and unpleasant, and then constructive and destructive. So pleasant and constructive, that's what we're doing at the moment. Unpleasant and constructive, that was the emotion that I felt prior to joining the podcast. Degree of
right.
anxiety,
Yeah,
degree of concern. Am I going to go in the right room this time? How am I going to get on with Nick? Is he going to be the nice guy that I thought he was last time? I mean, these are not pleasant emotions, but using them constructively, I'm getting myself psychologically and physiologically in the right place. And then pleasant emotions that are being used destructively is when we get joy at other people's failings, or we're using passive aggressive behavior, or we're doing things to please ourselves that are at the detriment to other people. And we've got to be very, very, very careful of the unpleasant, destructive emotions, which really is the sort of focus of your work and your podcast. How do you stop people going into stress-related places that cause them anxiety and, even worse, clinical depression?
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's the way you're framing it there is such a simple and effective way of thinking about it, because it made me instantly feel just so much less overwhelmed thinking about it that way, because you've got a framework where you can just apply something really simple to a very complicated thing. Like you're saying, there's all these emotions. Sometimes we don't know why we're even feeling a certain emotion. We might have everything going, how we want it in our life, yet we're feeling anxiety or we're feeling something that we can't explain. So then if you can just go back to one of those four things, okay, if it's a negative emotion, how can I use it constructively? Then it just simplifies it. Am I being, am I using a negative emotion in a destructive way? Okay, well, that's not good. I need to think about that. And we fall into those patterns so much of the time. I mean, would you say it's addictive for people to fall into the pattern of using, as you were saying on the other side, using emotions in a negative way and trying to bring other people down, trying to, whatever it is, using these negative emotions in that way? Is that something people get almost addicted to without knowing it?
Oh, very much so. There's a manager that you don't get on with at all.
Mm.
Well, let's take away the word "you." There's a manager that somebody doesn't get on with, and they will do anything in their power, and they often don't have the power to undermine that manager at every opportunity. And they will use passive aggressive behavior. It's not the emotion that is negative, it's the behavior that comes from the emotion that's negative, because they're feeling pleasant at that point. They're enjoying annoying the manager. They're enjoying the process of being destructive around their behavior towards that relationship. Now, if they were only to recognize that that's what they were doing and use that pleasant emotion in a more positive way, what is it that's causing the problem with the relationship? And try to identify ways of bringing it from a negative relationship to a positive relationship. I think that's the way forward. Now, again, easy for you and I to talk about it. Oh, yes, let's have a jolly conversation around these sort of behaviours. But it's very, very, very difficult to do when you are immersed in an environment where you just do not get on with your manager.
Yeah, and I presume it's similar to even saying, how do I come off a drug addiction or something like that? There's a positive emotion in the short term from taking cocaine, for example, or some sort of
Yeah.
drug, but then there's negative consequences, and it's not leading to anything positive for you. But that's very addictive and difficult to stop doing, because if you do this, take this certain action, you're going to get this instant feeling, the same way as, like you're saying, with the manager complaining about someone, you get a hit of dopamine. Oh my God, I feel
Yes.
better. I got that frustration out. But you're actually not doing anything to fix the problem. You're actually just, so the ironic thing of that is you end up harming yourself more than the other person anyway, because you're the one sitting in your problem. You're not, you're stopping yourself from actually taking action to solve anything. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, please click the subscribe button, leave a like or comment, share with your friends, and follow me on Instagram at Nick Bracks. I really appreciate your ongoing support.
It is. There's a couple of things that you mentioned within that, Nick. This sort of pleasant destructive behaviour is negative, and in the long run, it can lead to mental health issues. So we've just got to recognise that it is a pleasant set of emotions that you're feeling, yet the behaviour that you are driving through those emotions can cause problems. And it's going to be problems for the person experiencing that emotion and experiencing that behaviour. So that is the thing to knock on the head. Now, the other thing that I really do want to say about this is that it is very pleasant to have a good cathartic moan at times. So recognize when you're doing it, enjoy it, have that moan, have that conversation with the person who is listening and joining in the conversation and agreeing with you. Spend however long that you need to, but come out of it and think, right, what am I now going to do to make it better? What am
Yeah.
I going to do to change the situation? And it feels good to come out of a cathartic moan. So what I am not saying is do not have a cathartic moan. I'm saying do have it, enjoy it, but recognize it, compartmentalize it, and then move away from it and do something more positive as an outcome from it. Or even
Yeah.
recognize that you can't do anything about it, but come to terms with it.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes so much sense. And how much of a problem do you think it is now, having that a lot of people are just chasing that next hit, that next feeling? And I mean, you can see it if someone I guess it's opportunity or perceived opportunity. If someone has all the resource in the world, if you come from a lot of wealth, theoretically you can sort of use that to just give yourself whatever you feel like you need in that moment, but that's not going to lead to, anything positive. And on a smaller level, a lot of us now can feel like through the internet, social media, and all of these different things, instead of doing what's necessary and probably going to be good for me long term, what if I just get that hit of dopamine? What if I just get that validation, do this, do that, and constantly just making every decision all day, every day based on how do I just try and feel instant gratification and get that filled in that moment. How big of a problem do you think that is in the modern world?
Oh, very much a real problem in the modern world. Let me give you a really good example. Mobile devices.
Mm.
How addicted are we to mobile devices? And whenever I'm running a training course, what I will do is I will ask people to put their mobile devices away. And people find it incredibly hard to do that. And more often than not, they're having a sneaky look under the table, and I know that's what they're doing. Or they'll go out of the room in order to get their dopamine fix. So I've actually used that in a lot of my emotional intelligence workshops, whereby I will say to them, all right, get your mobile phone out. And what I'd like you to do is to go and find somebody in the room who you don't know very well and talk to them about your mobile phone. What is it that you like? What is it that you don't like? And they'll go away, they'll have this conversation. I'll let it run for a good 5-10 minutes because they're really enjoying it. And then I'll say to them, okay, right, what I'd like you to do is to hand your mobile phone over to the other person and go and sit down. You would be surprised how hard people find that. Oh, no, 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 I don't want to do that. I'm expecting a call. No, 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 no. What happens if a text comes in? Look, I don't care who you are. I don't care how important you are. The world is not going to implode because you don't receive a phone call or a text. You're in a training course with me at the moment. So that should be your focus. The company isn't going to collapse. The stock market isn't going to collapse. Hand your phone over and go and sit down. And then we talk about how people are feeling.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised the range of emotions that you get. Most people find it incredibly hard They're very, very twitchy. They're looking over the other end of the room, making sure the other person isn't looking in their phone. Now, how they can do that, I don't know, because they haven't got their fingerprint or their face print or anything. They really are incredibly twitchy around it. And then I say to them, okay, go and get your phone. How are you feeling now? And it gives them a really, really good example of how emotions can be quite intense and how they can change. And it also highlights to them how they are so addicted to that device that it can cause these problems that we've been talking about. It's impulse control, very low impulse control, and it lowers emotional intelligence. And a lot of people, once they appreciate that, they don't do anything about it. They
don't
just,
change
no,
it.
they
Yeah.
don't recognize it and they're back to the same old habits again. What we've got to do is to really, really concentrate on breaking these habits. And people will need to want to break the habit themselves. So it's not a case of me running one simple 15-minute, 30-minute exercise and suddenly, they've lost the habit of a lifetime. They've got
Yeah.
to want to break that habit, and that's incredibly hard.
And probably harder than most other habits, because it would be like if I have a eating problem. That's going to be really hard because we have to deal with food every day. If I want to lower my time on my phone, um, manage that addiction, how do I do it when I actually still am going to be using this same device that I'm addicted to every day? So this thing's going to be there in front of me. How do I control that when I need to use it? It's almost, if you can go cold turkey on something. And I quit alcohol about a year ago now, and I found it difficult maybe for the first couple of weeks, and then it wasn't that hard because it was just a decision of, okay, I don't drink anymore, and that's it. But things that we need or are going to have in our day to day life, that's so difficult to manage that because it's in front of you.
It is. It is. It's like you say, if people are overeating and they're overweight and they want to break that habit, we can't call it a habit of a lifetime because we need to eat.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
how do you actually then overcome the desire to eat, particularly if you're feeling very, very hungry? It's very, very hard. And it's very easy for me to sit here in judgment of people, which I do not want to do. But it's really a case of helping people to recognize that they have to own that issue and they have to own their addiction and they have to own their habits and make a conscious decision that they want to change. And whilst it's easy to say, it's very difficult to do. And what we've got to do is to say, look, how can I help you? What is it that I can do to support you? It's going to be challenging. You're going to find that you're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days, but what is it that you need? And you can do it. You just need to put your mind to it. And you can get yourself some support all the way through, but you need to want to do it for yourself, not for me, not for anybody else. Do it because you want to do it.
yeah, 100%. And it is really important that people do understand how difficult these things are going to be to do, because there's no point, sugarcoating things, because you'll try and do it and then you just won't stick to it. So I think understanding it's going to be difficult, putting the measures in place to be able to try and stick to whatever it is we're trying to break, if it's the phone usage, and then trying to make yourself accountable. We just, we need to really talk about these things like you're saying. And I love that exercise. I might have to steal that exercise next time I do a talk and see how it goes. I'll report back to you how it goes.
Oh, please do. I can't lay claim to that exercise. A coach that I was doing some work with suggested it to me, and I thought, aha, that sounds interesting. So I've taken it and used it, and it works brilliantly. Have some fun with it.
It's fascinating. Yeah, exactly, exactly. And just finally, on the corporate side of things, the work you're doing in workplaces, are you seeing in general through your work and just through society as a whole, is mental health self-awareness, these emotional intelligence, is it improving in workplaces from what you can see in general?
I can't answer that question, Nick. I don't know. I'm
Mm,
not actually measuring it. I'm not researching it.
yeah,
And there are people that are getting more self-awareness, are feeling fulfilled through the practice of emotional intelligence, and people will come along to me and say they've had value from my input, whatever it is, and I congratulate them because they've made a difference and they've become more self-aware and they've focused in more on their emotional intelligence. And there are some people that are stuck in the depths of despair. And I think we've also got to recognize the importance of the fact that there are going to be some people who do go into problems. They do have problems. They may be bipolar, and there are going to be times when when the black dog descends, or um, and they
yeah,
really are feeling very, very, very low. Now, in those sort of circumstances, what we've got to recognise, it's nothing to do with emotions, emotional control, normal behaviour, pleasant, unpleasant emotions, constructive, destructive, all that stuff we've been talking about. It's the fact that their brain does not have a biochemical in the right place at the right time, and they need a little bit of support,
yes,
um, pharmacological support, and they need some clinical intervention to help them. We've just got to recognize that that is not a failure. The very fact that they are seeking that support, the very fact that they are taking that pharmaceutical is the right thing to do. And often these things will take weeks, if not months, to work through. And we've just got to congratulate people for taking that very hard step of getting that support and being proud of the fact that they need to do that, because their brain is different from my brain, which is different from yours, Nick.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast and want to learn more, I've released my first book, Move Your Mind: How to Build a Healthy Mindset for Life, where I talk about my own journey with mental health and share tips from experts on how to maintain a healthy mindset. You can buy the book on Amazon or through my website at nickbracks.com/book. I think that's such an important point. I think we need to talk about that more and reduce that stigma and help people understand that, because it's literally like saying, I have a problem with my eyesight, I'm going to go and get glasses and now I can see clearly. If someone has that issue, if they've got bipolar or whatever it is, this um, it can be solved. Medication might be the answer if you do have that. So we need to understand that, because I think there is still a lot of stigma around that, and a lot of people, like you're saying, see that as a failure or see that as something that you only resort to if you're not able to cope with other measures. But it could just be the fact that no, there's that actual medical condition that you have where taking medication is going to put you on the level of what everyone else is naturally at, and then you can go about your life from that standpoint.
Yeah, and what I would encourage people to do is, when they are in the depths of despair, just to recognize it, not feel a failure. Is
Mm,
there anything that they can do, anything that they can do in that state that perhaps I can't do or you can't do? Is there anything that they can recognize? And if it is the case of being a lot more gloomy, a lot more critical, a lot more down, then work with it. Try and utilize it to your benefit. Or if needs be, just wallow in it.
yeah,
Just knowing full well that hard as it may be, it's going to take time to come out of it, but you will come out of it, and just relish
absolutely.
that time and look forward to it. Again, I've got to say to your listeners, and I've got to say to you, Nick, very easy for me to say, very easy for me to say. It is so hard to do. So who is it that you can get around you to give you the support that you need?
Yeah, exactly. No, it really is. So yeah, the more we talk about this and acknowledge that, it's not easy, but it's just taking that first step, putting that foot in front of the other. And yeah, I love everything you're talking about here. Last time you spoke about someone you were mentoring. Can we touch on that and get an update of where that's at?
Sure, I'm not mentoring him anymore. He was
Right.
a young lad. He had ADHD, and he was being bullied at school, and he hadn't been to school for a number of months because of this bullying and because of his condition. He was very, very high on the autistic spectrum. And when I met up with him, I said to him, look, I don't care what it is that you can't do. I'm really, really interested in what it is that you could do that I can't. And we talked about his autism. He was a bit reluctant to start with because of the social stigmatisms around that. But the beauty of this is that I'm so proud of that young lad. I stopped mentoring when he became 18, and the organisation that I was working, or I am working with, they say when somebody hits their 18th birthday, they're not eligible for a mentor anymore. So I wished him all the best, and I saw him on his way. And I heard from him a few weeks after I'd stopped mentoring. He'd gone along to join the local conservative club, and he'd also taken responsibility for autistic awareness within his school. And he was the representative going out representing autistic awareness. Now, he was saying a lot of that came down to me and the work that I did with him. And I am not taking any of that. That's all down to him and the work that he's done. I might have been the catalyst in that. Okay, I might accept that. But I'm really proud of the fact that he's done it and he has made a difference to his life and actually utilized what he's got and gone away and done something really positive with it. And I had conversations with him about times when I was feeling anxious or feeling
Mm.
annoyed or feeling angry or feeling unworthy. And I think that was a bit of a revelation to him because he thought that he was the only person who experienced these emotions. So having that conversation with him, adult to adult, I think was helpful to him. So that's where I'm at with him. I'm not, as I say, working with him anymore. It's his birthday this week, so I'll send him a text just to wish him all the best. I've got another new lad that I'm working with, and he's mildly to moderately deaf, but there's another story for another time.
Wow. Well, okay. Next time I'll have to get an update on how that's going. But mentorship is so important. I think we all need guidance. We all need mentorship, and I think that's amazing you're doing that. And like you're saying, it's giving people that advice so they can be empowered to make their own decisions and go on that path. But everyone needs it. We all benefit from it. No one can do everything on their own, and I love that message. A lot of the world won't cater to people that think differently, but it's not because there's anything wrong with them. Like you're saying, they just need the opportunity to think, hey, hang on, where can I fit into the world? What skills do I have that other people might actually not be as strong in, where I can, do my own thing and do something different. And that's often a lot of the people that make big change in the world. So I think it's so important. So I think that's a great story, and I love getting that update.
Well, thank you for asking.
So, Robin, we finish, as you might remember, with 5 closing questions each time. So I think it'll be
Oh, yes, I
interesting to.
forgot.
Well, it'll be interesting to do it again, and we can compare your answers this time to what we had last time, and see what comes up. But the first one is, what is the best childhood memory that comes to mind for you?
Yes, I remember you asking me that question last time when we went all around the houses, and I did tell you a story about the fact that I have moved around the United Kingdom a lot.
Yeah.
And I really will go back to that and say to you, Nick, that I'm very, very grateful for having that opportunity to move around the country because I've got great friends from all those places that I've lived. Um, even they are childhood friends that I've grown up with, and I often meet up with them, and we talk about how our lives have changed since then. So it's not a specific memory; it's the fact that I've got lots and lots of memories demarcated around the various places that I've lived.
Which is, yeah, I love it. I love that. And I think variation in life is so important, and having those different memories to draw on. Yeah, that's what life's about, all of these experiences. The next one is, what do you think is currently the biggest burden on mental health in society?
And last time I was talking about people being labelled, and I will go back to that. I
Mm,
talked to you about my mentor having ADHD and being on the autistic spectrum, and again, these are labels. And what we need to do is to look at breaking down the stigma around labels. We've talked about stigma, and I think the biggest barrier is having these stigmas. Um, and if you've got a label, make the label work for you. Nick, I will share something with you here. I'm actually mildly to moderately deaf. I wear hearing aids. It's not a problem for me. I actually quite enjoy the stigma of it because I think people get quite frightened. Oh, I don't know how to respond to this. Not, not your problem. It's mine, but it's not a problem at all. I actually quite relish it.
I love that. Well, thank you for sharing. And actually, since we last spoke, actually found this out through, since I started dating my girlfriend. I've got, ADHD, and quite severe, that I had never had identified, and sort of it made sense for a lot of my own mental health journey, and being able to identify that, and start understanding it and working through it, just made such a difference, because you actually then can realize, okay, this is why my brain's working that way, and start looking at how you can make that work for you in the direction you're going in.
Yeah, this is what makes you special.
Yeah, exactly. What is your personal definition of happiness?
It's again going back to our last conversation. We were talking about happiness versus contentment. It's Let's go back to our conversation that we just had. It's
Yeah,
a very pleasant emotion, so make sure that you're using it constructively to get into areas of flow where time seems to stand still and you are doing your best possible work. Use the happiness that way. Don't use the happiness destructively to destroy relationships or take too many risks.
great answer. Really good answer. I think this one might be different from last time. I can't remember if I asked you this one, but the next one is, what are you most afraid of?
Looking like an absolute, or sounding like an absolute wally on your show, Nick. No, going into situations, we're going into the unknown. We will always experience a degree of fear. Recognize it. What is it that we're worried about losing? Um, and I think if you can identify that, yeah, there are things that make me very, very fearful on a kind of global level, on a kind of society level, and on a personal level. Globally, I'm really, really fearful of climate change and the fact that the politicians don't seem to take it seriously. On a society level, yeah, I think we are doing things. Um, our focus seems to be wrong on many, many, many fronts. Fear for me and my family in terms of how we can establish ourselves for the future in the most appropriate way. And, fear on a day to day basis. Am I doing the right thing? Am I living to my values? Am I um, making myself look a wally and sound a wally when I'm talking to Nick? Is the word wally an appropriate word, or is it something that you're familiar with or your listeners are familiar with?
I'm enjoying hearing that one. I've heard it before, but it's definitely not something in Australia that we say. So I guess that's a UK sort
It
of phrase,
is,
is it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is.
I like
I
it.
don't know how to define it. It's somebody who makes themselves look incredibly stupid. Let's put it that way.
Oh, well, I can assure you you're not doing that on the podcast. So there you go. So, final one. What are you most proud of?
There's a lot of things that I'm proud of. I'm proud of the fact that you and I have had a great conversation. We've connected at a very deep level for a second time. Look, let me just leave it at that. That's what I'm proud of at this particular moment in time.
I love that. Well, so am I. And yeah, it's so great chatting to you again, Rob. And I really appreciate you making the time. Always enjoy these chats. I think the work you're doing is incredible. And oh, last thing before we finish up, where can our listeners go if they want to find more about you?
Well, if you put my name into LinkedIn, you'll find me on there. If you put my name into Facebook, you'll find me on there. If you put my name into Google with emotional intelligence, I will come up there. Look for me at eiforchange.com. That's ei4change.com. And if you're interested in my online courses, go to https://courses.eiforchange.info.
And we will have all of those in the show notes. So for all the listeners, make sure to check it all out because you're doing incredible work. So yeah, thank you again for making the time.
It's been brilliant, Nick. Thank you. It's been great.
Appreciate it. Great to see you. Thanks so much to Robin Hills for joining me today for Move Your Mind. Also, a huge thank you to those of you listening. I really appreciate your support. If you'd like to learn more or connect with me personally, visit www.nickbracks.com or send me a DM on Instagram at nickbracks. Please don't forget to click the subscribe button, leave a like or comment, share with your friends, and follow me on Instagram. It really makes a difference. Thank you so much.